Good morning. Today's first lesson is on step number 1 of the investigation process, preliminary review. Preliminary review is step number 1 of the investigation process. This is the step that follows immediately after the client has indicated that he or she wants an assignment to be done. That is after the client has received an allegation. And this is where the investigation starts. My students have always asked me, and even members, certified members, the newly certified members have always asked me how and where should the investigation start. This is the how of starting an investigation. This is where the investigation starts. Once you have been approached by a client with a proposal to carry out a forensic investigation assignment, to investigate fraud, to investigate corruption, or to investigate any other financial malpractices, you must first ask yourself the question, what is the nature of that investigation? Another question you should ask yourself, are you up to the job? Do you have the required personnel to carry out the investigation? How extensive is the assignment? So you need to sit down with the client and then try to get to understand the nature of the assignment, the extent of the assignment, and from there you will determine whether you are up to that assignment, whether you are capable of completing that assignment to the satisfaction of the client. Not only the satisfaction of the client, but the standards of investigation that is required, so that the whole world will read your report after the investigation and say, wow, this is a job well done. Let me define what is a preliminary investigation. Preliminary review is like an investigation. And what is this? Preliminary review or investigation is any inquiry carried out before the actual investigation to enable the investigator to make a decision whether to take the assignments or not. It also assists the investigator to get a glimpse of the proposed assignment. This is also referred to as pre-engagement assessment. Many of my students have also asked me who is supposed to bear to carry the cost of this initial investigation before a contract is signed. My answer is always the investigator. The investigator has to cater for the costs of the initial or preliminary investigation. That is before the signing of the engagement contract. This cost will save the investigator a lot of costs. Will save the investigator a lot of trouble. Because if you just go to just take up an assignment which you might not complete to the satisfaction of the client, then you'll be in trouble. And even your professional reputation will be tainted. Therefore, it is better you spend a little more dollars in carrying out these engagement investigation and save yourself a lot of costs in the process of the investigation. As we have already defined the preliminary investigation, we have seen or noted that this is where you will make the decision whether to take up the assignment or not. It is better you decline an assignment rather than take it up and you do not complete it to the satisfaction of the client. It's better you refer it to someone else rather than just take it up and then you find yourself in the process, in the middle of the process, that you are not able to complete the assignment. Due to lack of capacity or lack of other resources. What is the nature of this, the nature and extent and even the purpose of preliminary investigation? The preliminary review is a pre-investigation engagement exercise that seeks to find out facts about the following: the complexity of the client's operations. You have to understand this because that is the environment within which you will be operating as an investigator. The possibility of the perpetrator's alleged wrongdoing of the alleged case ending up in court. You have to discuss this with the client before you take up the assignment. The objectives of the client in the investigation. The client's industry. The regulations touching on the client's business or operations. The expectations of the client as to completion of the investigation. The timelines within which you must complete the investigation. The suspects of the alleged wrongdoing, if there are any. The witnesses of the suspected wrongdoing, if there are any. This is the time when you have to get the list, the rough list of the witnesses, those who are supposed to be witnesses. You have to get something like an indication from the client whether they already know the witnesses and the suspects, know the client and the nature of his business, how complex is his or her business environment, how extensive is the fraud or corruption allegation, does the company have branches and even overseas subsidiaries, are all the branches affected by the fraud, and hence you will be required to travel across the country and even across the borders. You have to ask all these questions to understand the nature of the nature and the extent of the investigation assignment. When is preliminary investigation required? A preliminary investigation is required to be conducted before the signing of the engagement contract, as I've already said, so that the investigator enters into the assignment agreement much aware of what is required of him and his team. Preliminary review must be carried out every time a certified forensic investigation professional, CFIP, is approached for forensic assignments so that he or she does not rush into what she or he doesn't understand well. This is the first and the most important stage of the investigation process. Whoever skips this process and rushes into the assignment always makes mistakes that will lead into deep regret. The preliminary review comes before the anything is done for the client, because this is meant to equip the investigator with the information. Then McLaughlin 2013 says this: I call this stage preliminary review. This comes before proper engagement. If one considers himself not fully qualified and equipped to complete the investigation, he can either disqualify himself or engage other qualified professionals to reinforce his team. I would also add that you should find out the client's objectives for the investigation. Do they want to prosecute? Do they want to terminate someone's employment? Is their focus on finding out exactly how and why the incident happened so as to prevent a repeatation? Do they want to try and recover lost or stolen assets or cash? Or is it a combination of one or more of these things? That is end of quote from Dan McLaughlin, 2013. Preliminary review can safely be considered the initial stage of any investigation. Basically, in this step, the investigator seeks to get basic information which will guide them in coming up with the dependable quote proposal to the client. It is done both prior, at the start, and at the start of the actual assignment. This step mainly reviews the areas which have been affected by the fraud or the respective white-collar crime, thereby providing an opportunity for coming up with a rough estimate of the time and the expertise needed to successfully execute the investigation. This step not only assists the investigator to get an understanding of the nature of the investigation, but also helps them in understanding the scope or extent of the assignment. During preliminary review, the certified forensic investigation professional may seek oral information to enable him or her develop better understanding of the client's operations and the nature of business. According to Livingston Ochan, Director for Investigation, South Sudan Anti-Corruption Commission, the initial step in forensic investigation understands the client's business and environment, and all this information leads to the signing of the engagement contract letter. Engagement contract letter is simply a letter showing legal binding between two parties. According to me, however, the discussion and signing of an engagement letter is second step in an investigation. The process of conducting a forensic investigation is in many ways similar to the process of conducting an audit, but with some additional considerations. Important information about the allegations. During preliminary review, the certified investigation professional will be in a position to gather the following information about the allegation: time or period of the alleged wrongdoing or perpetration. Sometimes the period is number of years, several number of years. The types of alleged wrongdoing, how the client got information about the alleged wrongdoing, that is how was the offense detected and who reported it. The crime scene, that is the location of the alleged wrongdoing. Do some evidence exist in the form of documents or tangible items indicating the possibility of wrongdoing? If some evidence is available, it has to be collected and be examined by the investigator to establish the possibility of existence or otherwise of the alleged offense. Considerations when accepting or declining the engagement. What should be considered? Because during this preliminary review, this is where you make a decision whether to accept, to take up the assignment or decline it, and even assign it to someone else. The items to be considered in accepting or declining the engagement, the forensic investigation engagement, are as follows. Number one, is the investigator up to the assignment? From the information you have gathered so far, you can be able to decide whether you have the capacity to carry out the engagement. Does he or she have the capacity to exercise the nature of the investigation? Number three, does he or she have a team with the required skills and experience? Four, does he or she have the time required to complete the job? Number five, does he or she have access to the special experts required for the perfect completion of the assignment? Number six, if the international or cross-border operations are required, does he or she have the requisite resources, experience, and skills to carry out cross-border operations? Number seven, experiences in similar assignments in the past. Does the investigator have experience in similar assignments? Number eight, the objectives of the client. Once you have gone through the 8 items, you will be able to decide whether you are taking up the assignment or not. If you consider yourself not up to the assignment, please decline. It is better for you to decline an assignment rather than take it up and you are proved to be competent to complete the assignment. Accepting the investigation assignment. The forensic investigator must initially consider whether their firm has the necessary skills and experience to accept the assignment. All investigations in forensics are specialist in nature, meaning the work needs detailed knowledge of investigative skills alongside legal framework. Forensic investigators have to have received training in investigation and interview techniques and in maintaining the safe custody of evidence gathered and corrected. Further considerations comprise whether or not the investigation is being requested by an investigation firm. Should it be? This poses extra ethical inquiries, since the investigation firm will be potentially exposed to advocacy management and self-review threats to objectivity. Except robust safeguards are used The clients must not provide investigation and the forensic investigation services to the same client or firm. In most cases, commercial considerations are crucial and a high fee level ought to be negotiated to compensate for the specialist nature of the duty and the likelihood of the involvement of senior and experienced members of the firm in the investigation. Factors to be considered in accepting a forensic assignment are competence. This refers to the relevant academic and professional training and qualifications. If the investigator lacks the skills and the qualifications required and cannot find professionals with the right skills to employ, he or she has to decline from taking up the assignment and recommend someone else to take it up. Number 2, capacity. Does the investigator or his investigation team have capacity in terms of resources to complete the assignment to the satisfaction of the client and within the time limit set by the client? If not, then he or she does not have the capacity to complete the assignment and therefore must decline it. Capacity here refers to the equipment, finance, personally required for the completion of the assignment to the professional standards. Number 3, experience. Relevant experience in similar assignments. Number 4, availability. Is the investigator available for the assignment? If he or she does not, or she cannot have the time required to complete the assignment, he or she should let someone carry out the assignment. Independence. Is there any semblance of conflict of interest? Is the investigator going to investigate relatives or business associates or close friends? If that is so, then there exists conflict of interest and therefore he or she must decline the assignment. How to prepare and conduct a preliminary review. This is how to prepare for and conduct a preliminary review. Number 1, book appointment with the prospective client. Sorry. Number 1, book appointment with the prospective client. Number 2, attend the meeting and interview the client. Seek a detailed account of the alleged offenses. Number 3, attend the meeting and interview the client. Seek a detailed account of the alleged offenses. Forensic investigator must request the client to agree to preliminary inquiries about his business before an engagement contract is arrived at. Number 4, examine the financial statements of the client. Number 5, examine the external auditor's reports. Number 6, ask the organization structure of the client's organization. Number 7, review the client's business environment. Based it on my experience, step number 1 in a forensic investigation includes understanding the client's business environment. The client's business environment includes but is not limited to the following. Number 1, the structure of the organization, internal controls and security systems, nature of the business, ICT systems in use and the extent of reliance on those systems, the complexity of the organization's operations, the client's industry within which they operate, number of total staff in the area of investigation, and the possibility of having the instant linking to the client's branches or subsidiaries or suppliers and the customers. At this step, the investigator is mainly interested in knowing the extent of the incident, that is, the complexity of the client's operations, which may have an impact on the effectiveness of the investigation. In addition, the investigator seeks to know whether or not the organization is working in a highly regulated industry. The information gathered in this stage has great bearing, especially in planning and resource allocation for the investigation. In fact, from my own experience, it is this information which determines the overall contract quote. Poor review of client's environment will culminate into underquotes and overstatement of the investigators' team's ability to deliver. Certified forensic investigation professionals, like any other professionals, are expected to engage specialized experts to handle unique areas of the investigation. For instance, the gathering of computer and digital evidence. The need for special expertise is determined at this stage and the most important stage. Interview with the witnesses. They need to consider video recorded interviews not always immediately apparent, either to the first police officer who has contact with the witness or to the other professionals involved prior to the police being informed. Even where it is apparent the need to take immediate action in terms of securing evidence, making initial decisions about the criminal investigation plan might be such that some initial questioning is necessary. Any initial questioning should be aimed at requiring a brief account of what is alleged to have taken place. A more detailed account should not be pursued at this stage, but it should be left until the formal interview takes place. Such a brief account should include where and when the alleged incident took place and who was involved or otherwise present. This is because this information is likely to influence decisions made in respect of the following aspects of the criminal investigation plan. Number one, forensic and medical examination of the victim. Number two, scene of crime examination. Number three, interviewing of other witnesses. Number four, arrest of alleged offenders. Number five, witness support. In these circumstances, any early discussions with the witness should, as far as possible, adhere to the following basic care principles. Number one, listen to the witness. Number two, never stop the witness with freely recalling significant events. Number three, the questions asked should be as far as possible into the circumstances and they should be open-ended. Number four, ask no more questions than are necessary in circumstances to take immediate action. Number five, create comprehensive note of the discussion, taking care to record the timing, setting and the people present as well as what was said by the witness and anybody present. Number six, come up with a note of the behavior of the witness and anything else that might be relevant to any subsequent formal interview or a wider investigation. Number seven, record exclusively comments made by the witness or events that might be relevant to the legal process up to the time of the interview. Number eight, make a decision whether to take up the assignment or not. After all considerations of preliminary review, the certified forensic investigation professional, CFIP, should make a decision to get started on the engagement or not. If he or she decides that the assignment is well within his or her resources to complete it to the professional standards, he or she must ask the client to sign an engagement contract. What if decision is taken to decline the assignment? Some of my students have argued that it would be money lost in terms of time wasted in carrying out the pre-engagement assessment if the engagement, the assignment is not accepted. So then, they therefore suggested that one enters into a pre-engagement agreement to carry out the preliminary review. I have in practice found it challenging to convince the client to agree to such contract. And therefore, I do advise that the prospective investigator in this assignment should be able to absorb the expenses involved in the preliminary review, because this covers him or her and makes him or her knowledgeable before taking the decision to carry out the assignment, rather than take up the assignment blindfolded, and then later on you discover that you have taken an assignment which is far beyond your capacity to complete. I therefore recommend the following. The investigator should be prepared to shoot at the preliminary expenses. Even after all of the preliminary interviews, the investigator needed to protect his or her integrity and professionalism. He or she must not be in a hurry to take up an assignment and then later discover that they are charged to the client due to limited knowledge of his or her operations and the extent of the alleged wrongdoing. The client would like you to complete the job within the costs agreed to initially and also within the timeline set. Anything like a variation that was not foreseen from the start of the engagement will indicate that you are either incompetent or dishonest. Number two, plan to carry out the assessment in a very cost-effective manner. Techniques such as using questionnaires so that you will only spend time analyzing the questionnaires results instead of interviewing the client and the top officers one by one in person. This is what I recommend as to mitigate against the expenditures that one is supposed to incur before the signing of the engagement. Preliminary review leads the investigator to avoid a lot of trouble indeed, because if you take up the assignment, you understate the quotation for the assignment, you overstate your capability, your qualifications, and the number of staff required, and then you find in the middle of the investigation that you cannot move, and you have already signed with the client that you will complete the engagement for a certain amount of dollars and within a given time, and then you run to the client to ask him or her to double or triple the costs, and they give you more time, then the client will look at you as incompetent and very dishonest, because you cannot agree to do something and later on you start complaining. That is the trouble. The preliminary review is meant to cure, is meant to prevent, so that when you enter into the assignment, you enter into something you are capable of completing to very high professional standards, to the satisfaction not only of the client but of the world. But because your forensic investigation report once filed with the client and requested by the court of law, it will become a public document which can even be taken by the media and be serialized on print and electronic media. And therefore, if it was the work was shoddy and substandard, that will destroy your reputation as the investigator. You'll be destroyed completely, and therefore you lose a lot more money than what you could have saved during the preliminary review stage. This is the end of the lecture this morning, and as I can see, nobody is raising hand to ask any question or to make any comment, and therefore I hang up until the evening at around 7 p.m. our time, when I would come online again to discuss the second step in the forensic investigation process, and this will be the drafting and the signing of the engagement or contract letter. The signing of the engagement or contract letter follows the preliminary review. Thank you very much for listening, and bye.